Liftoff for PS4 is here, and for those that don't know, Liftoff is a FPV drone simulator developed by a small video game company called Lugus Studios in Belgium. It has been one of the top simulators on PC since 2015 when it was released, and now after being teased almost a year ago with a very shiny reveal trailer, it's finally available on console too. Although it may seem like a silent launch for mainstream gamers, within the FPV community, it's arguably a pretty big deal. A lot of people consider Liftoff one of the better simulators out there for PC, up there with the likes of Drone. So the prospect of one of the giants in the drone sim world coming to console is pretty compelling. The idea of playing on the couch for long, comfortable sessions and allowing pilots that don't have expensive gaming PCs to have a top-end sim available to them is brilliant. And as an added bonus, it might recruit a few gamers into the hobby who weren't familiar with FPV beforehand. All sounds really great. So does it deliver on any of these promises? Well, the short answer is no. At least not right now. And for the longer version, well, let's dive in and see what Liftoff has to offer and where it fail-safes. On the first load, the game kindly asks if you have experience flying FPV or are new to the hobby. And this basically just sets up some options for you. It enables some assists if you're new, but these are all options that can be changed later on. So as you get better, you can start to customize the control system. So I'm going to start as if I'm a newcomer and see how it fares as a game for someone with no experience. So the first thing that most new players will likely do is play the Getting Started tutorial series. And in this, we get a text message from none other than Joshua Bardwell saying he's doing a course on the basics of FPV flying. And I'm pretty sure that's not the first or last time we'll see that series on his YouTube channel. It starts off giving you a brief introduction into FPV and showing you some of the basics of how to fly. There's no voiceover work here though, which was a little bit disappointing. I was kind of hoping we'd hear the old,
"I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today."
But no, definitely missed the trick there, Lugus. Once you've got the basics down, it does offer an acro tutorial after you've completed the introduction tutorial, but the difficulty jump here is massive, and if you are new, it's likely to put you off. So changing from full assist, which is kind of like driving a car in a racing game, to a full manual acro mode drone is a big leap. I suppose it serves a purpose to people that might have an interest in FPV and just don't have any training yet, so it could be used as a guide. But for somebody that's completely new or just an average gamer, that jump is going to seem way too big and will probably make people switch off. So with the getting started out the way, let's take a quick tour of the options and different flight modes available. There's the full assist mode, which holds the altitude for you and also helps with your turning. So that means there's no separate roll and yaw axis on the turning. So you can kind of fly easy enough just using the left stick and the right trigger as basically like an accelerate. After that then there's the traditional sort of flight modes like level mode, which gives you full axis control, but will sort of like self-level the quad if you let go of everything. There's the acro trainer, or limited acro, which is what they call it in game, which doesn't auto-level but won't let you rotate over a certain amount. And then there's the full bona fide acro mode. Interestingly, there's a hold altitude toggle independent of the flight mode, and there's also a switch that even alters the altitude to match the next race gate that you're heading towards. So you really can turn it into something that is very similar to a driving game. In the game, you can change the camera between third person and first person view, and honestly, with the full assist, I'd recommend using it with the third person camera, because having the quad move around to correct you without you actually doing any input is kind of unnerving and does actually feel a little bit disorienting when you're in first person. So if you're a newcomer, full assist and third person. If you're FPV experienced, then first person and a traditional mode seems to work best. While I've got FPV experience, this is an FPV channel after all, so I opted to go full manual, full acro mode, all the assists off, and it is bloody awkward to fly on the PlayStation controller, let me tell you that much. But it is supposed to be sort of accessible to new people, so I will let someone who has no FPV experience try it out with all the assists on, and then we'll get sort of an accurate representation. So, Claudia, you've never played this game before, but have you ever flown a drone before?
I've flown small whoops and whoops. I'll say that again. I've flown small whoop drones and just the cinematic drones, Sparks, and...
Oh yeah, like DJI drones, yeah. Yeah, okay, cool. So no experience really in FPV. You only ever flew line of sight, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, this should be interesting then. I'm going to get you started on the tutorial and we'll see how you play through that, and then we'll do a race.
This is not how real drones work.
This is like a full assist mode that's supposed to be easier. So you keep pressing forwards on the on the left stick to go forwards, don't you? Yeah. It's hard, isn't it? So I actually think this is harder than the racing, because you can put a mode on that like does the height for you as well, and then you only really need to use the right trigger and the left stick, like left and right. And then
This is gonna confuse every gamer.
You think so?
It's because you should control the altitude with the triggers.
Right, so this is kind of like a race mode, but it's not going to start until you go through the first gate. And the controls are, you only need the right trigger now and the left stick. It should automatically do the altitude for you depending on the next gate. So this is like the easiest mode that they do. I want to see if you can get around the course at least once.
I'm stuck! Feels like it's very windy.
Yeah, there's a lot of drift.
Yeah, I guess once you get used to this, you can add on the altitude as an extra challenge.
Afterwards, yeah. Alright, you just got 151, let's see if you can beat that.
What? What's pointing me to a hay bay?
Yeah, that was a bit weird. Wow, that was really good. So the elephant in the room is, does it work with your transmitter? And the answer is no. It's not possible to use your transmitter with liftoff on the PS4, at the moment at least. They say they're working on it, and DCL actually did have support natively for some transmitters after a couple of patches. So there is kind of hope there, but obviously there seems to be some hoops you have to jump through with Sony. So fingers crossed for liftoff. However, I did get the transmitter working on DCL before they added support natively, so I should be able to use the same method to get it to work on liftoff. So I'm going to be using my transmitter for all of the gameplay footage from now on, so I'm not going to be talking about the sort of awkwardness of using a PS4 controller anymore, but just know that it isn't great, and if you are going to go that route, then you'll probably have to relearn how to fly a little bit. Your muscle memory will be a bit off, and it will take a little bit of time before you can actually fly as good as you can on a normal radio. If you happen to own a Titan 2, then I'll leave links to my console tuner files in the description below, so you can install those on yours and use your radio in liftoff as well. So the biggest feature that this has that the PC version of liftoff doesn't is a career mode. This starts you off in 2015 with limited quad parts available to you and challenges you to a series of races, all set up and delivered to you through text messages on a phone. Speaking of 2015, the game also features a loot box system to unlock parts in the non-career mode, and I didn't really find that compelling or really that detrimental either. It's kind of just there. And honestly, all the parts to make like a decent drone to use in free flight are kind of available from the start anyway. So you play through a bunch of races, all framed in this universe where you're flying with your mates who text you about new spots. And every now and again, a company releases a new product that is then available to use in the career mode. I found the progression pretty slow up until the end of like 2016, when loads of parts then start opening up. But the difficulty curve is kind of all over the shop. They might throw in a super hard track amongst a group of really easy ones just randomly through the career. And it didn't actually hold my attention to get further than basically about halfway through the 2017 season. Still, I guess it gives you some kind of goal, I suppose, sort of something to complete. Outside of the career mode, there are two other options in single player, that is the quick setup and random. Quick setup allows you to pick any mode, track and quad and just sort of jump straight in. But honestly, the menu is really bare bones. If you haven't played all the tracks, then these names kind of mean nothing to you, and similar to the race courses as well. Literally no clue what any of these are. No images of the quads to recall what they are either, and the modes aren't explained anywhere either. Like, what is an infinite race? The only way to find out what all of these things are is just to systematically try them all, which isn't a great user experience. But once you know what you like, this will be your main entry point to do what you want in the game. Random just seemed really bizarre to me. It basically just gives you a random track on a random map and a random quad and just says go race. I mean, that might be interesting to try once or twice just for a little self-challenge, but really once you know what you want to do, quick setup's going to be where you spend most of your time. Let's not forget this is a multiplayer game. Well, actually you might as well forget that it's a multiplayer game, because from my experience, there is a lobby, but I didn't see another person in there in all of the time since I bought the game. So theoretically it's a multiplayer game, but how well it works, I couldn't tell you. As for standard features, all of the drone parts and skins from the PC version are in this, and I think there's a couple of extra skins as well if you buy like a more expensive deluxe version of the game. And there doesn't seem to be anything majorly different here. You can customize your fleet in the workshop, and the interface is all fairly nice. It seems to work well enough. But weirdly, you can only adjust the camera tilt 6 degrees at a time when you're customizing your drone. So it might not seem like you can dial in the sort of perfect angle on the camera that you're used to. But it does remedy that by having an option to fine-tune the camera when you're in-game using the D-pad. The inclusion of the career mode is the biggest net positive for the console version. The PC version doesn't have that at all. And all the maps and races from the PC one are present here, except for the Russian woodpecker level. That is strangely absent. The only thing I can think is they split the code base at a certain point to make the console version, and that was before they released the Russian woodpecker level. So I guess it could be merged back in at a later date and we'll see a patch with that level included. So that's kind of forgivable, but the next difference is very hard to forgive. So having played hundreds of hours of Liftoff on the PC, something about the PS4 version just wasn't sitting right. It kind of felt like the air resistance wasn't really the same, and you had that sort of floating sensation. Now this really is one of the biggest complaints I have about this port. In my opinion, Liftoff on the PC remains relevant because of its physics and the feel of the quad. Velocidrone has all the multi-GP racing stuff in it, DRL has the massive sprawling maps, and Liftoff was all about the feel. And this version, well, it feels wrong. In an effort to prove this, I have built the exact same quad on the PC and the console version, identical components, picked the same map, and did a full throttle punch up from the ground. You can see on the PS4 version, it goes up much faster. It reaches about 120 kilometers an hour, or on the PC, it only gets up to about 90, 95. And when it falls, it also falls about twice as slowly, only reaching about 35 kilometers an hour, where the PC one reaches about 55. So these two differences do make a huge impact on how you fly. So this is a big difference. Not having the true lift-off feel is kind of a deal breaker. But I did notice something when I was in the workshop and you go to customize the frame, there is a slider labeled additional weight. Now this slider isn't in the PC version, this is only on the console version. And if you do add about 400 or 500 grams to the quad, it does seem to get the physics a little bit closer to the PC version. And this feels like, to me, they were aware that the problem existed and they've just tried to add this little hack in to fix the problem. Oh, also the last difference I found is the little thing at the top of Hanover doesn't spin on the console version. Now I'm playing on a PS4 Pro, so it doesn't get any faster than this. This is like the top PS4 console you can get. And there are constant frame dips that negatively affect the experience in a pretty severe way. And they were present on pretty much all the maps. There's a couple like the car park level that runs fine, but it was most obvious on the Green and Hanover levels, which are the biggest ones. I think they're the largest maps in the game. But I did realize that the game was running at a native 4K image. So there is an option on the PS4 where you can force it to render at a lower resolution. So putting the resolution down to 720p in the PlayStation system settings, and it ran amazingly. But this really isn't something you should ever have to do, because now if I go and play another game, it will be in 720p when I know that other games can run at 4K. So you should never really have to change the system settings on the PS4 to compensate for a game's bad optimization. So during my sessions, I ran into a whole range of bugs and kind of awkward UX stuff as well. There was graphic glitches when you're near objects, weird glowing stuff that makes no sense. Customized quads just kind of forget the colors that you set on them when you reload the game. So I don't think there's any way to actually save the colors that you choose. We also got stuck on the main menu after playing the tutorial. I had to force quit the game because it just wasn't responding to any input. And I even got thrown to a black screen when I tried to restart a race, and it totally soft-locked the game. I had to restart again. There's also some weird UX stuff as well. If you edit your drone when you're in the career mode, it takes you to the workshop so you can edit the drone, and then the only way to get back to the career mode is to exit back to the main menu and then start all over again. So yeah, it just does seem like it's not been well thought out. So with all that said, I think it's pretty clear that Liftoff left me feeling pretty unconfident with the quality of the port as a whole. So for people new to FPV, they can play with like the third-person camera mode and all the assists on, and they might get something out of it. But it's not like a great game experience, it's only really sort of okay. But if someone had like a sort of passing interest in FPV already and they wanted to know more about what it's about, then I think they would definitely get something out of this game. But it does feel like that sort of demographic of people that would get the most out of this game is pretty small. So as for experienced players, well, with the inferior physics and like all the bugs and glitches and the fact that it doesn't support your transmitter, also the performance problems as well, it is really hard to recommend Liftoff as like a quality drone sim experience, the likes of which you get with the PC version. Maybe there is hope. Like the majority of the issues that are here can all be fixed in a patch. It's just up to Lugus Studios to do that. So I do wish them the best, and I do hope they keep supporting it, because on PC Liftoff is great, and I think this version has the potential to be good. It's just that right now it isn't. Right, well that's my opinion anyway. Let me know how you got on with Liftoff if you tried it on the PS4 or Xbox. Who knows, maybe the Xbox version is actually a lot better in terms of the performance. Yeah, so leave a comment, let me know. Also, subscribe if you like this kind of content, because I am going to be doing a few more product reviews in the next few weeks. Some T-Motor motors and a new ESC that I've been trying. Yeah, but apart from that, I'll leave it there and say thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.